Yay, we're live. Hi there, gang. Welcome in. Thanks for coming in. This is the Dinosaur Omelette. My name is Christopher.
I'm Angela.
It's Angela. Welcome, guys. Tonight we're doing the shift from winter to spring. I know it sounds a little crazy. Why are we talking about spring? Why are we talking about spring in the middle of December?
Because of planning?
Because of planning. Yeah, spring is right around the corner. So we're talking about getting ready for that and the shift and the changes and the physiological stuff too concerning your animals that you may not be top of mind, that you should consider before the warm weather gets back here. Mm-hmm. Cool. A little bit about us. Do you want to tell your quick version or should I?
We have a small hatchery here in southern Lancaster County, Pennsylvania. We hatch out jumbo quail, the jumbo wild Pharaoh Caturnix quail for the purpose of meat and eggs. They're very good on the homestead.
Fabulous meat and egg animals.
And even if you have a tiny patio, they're very good quail to have, very large.
Can't be this tiny.
They're about the size of a grapefruit.
Wait a minute. We have one drawn to scale right here. Right? That's about how big it gets. Mm-hmm. Yeah. I made cartoon ones so I don't have to deal with live birds. But this is about how big they get.
Mm-hmm. And then, their eggs are the largest for quail.
There's a chick. That's about how big a chick gets. Well, they're even smaller.
Yeah, they're a lot. When they hatch, they grow very quickly. Anyway, so we do sell them, but we teach people, encourage people to raise animals and produce fruit or vegetables, whatever they can.
Look thus, ladies and gentlemen, a quail egg. Oh, isn't that cool? An interesting pattern. You know, an interesting thing about the quail, you always tell me story. It's a unique pattern. Mm-hmm. I guess I'll tell the story. In the oviduct system, where the eggs are manufactured from front to end, towards the end of the line, they get inked. They get a stamp of approval, which is this coloration. Chicken eggs, of course, have a solid color. But the quail have a pattern. And what's interesting about this is that the pattern is unique to each individual bird, meaning that when they lay an egg, it's going to be very similar or quite identical to the one previous. Not identical, but very similar.
Yeah, similar enough that you'll recognize the pattern.
You'll be able to tell who's laying eggs. It's interesting stuff. Cool stuff.
So then we also have silkies. They're a designer type breed, fluffy chicken. They're a bantam, which is a miniature chicken. And we have our line is called the Dinopuff Silkies, and we have those available to the public.
Where's your Dinopuff thing?
Oh, it's right here.
Signage, ladies and gentlemen. She said Dinopuffs. That's what she calls them, silkies. This is fading out in the sun. Okay, sorry about that.
And we also have our My Little Dinosaur feed. It's a high quality feed that we feed to our birds, our breeder birds, our laying chickens, our ducks, and we also make that available to the public.
Why is that important? So you can buy bags of feed? Well, yeah, sure. But also, you guys understand we put a lot of effort and time into education, knowledge, understanding. So the feed we produce for these animals isn't just a hodgepodge mix we got from Facebook. It's been thoroughly researched and vetted for quality and for the health and well-being of the birds, particularly in consideration of their metabolic and cellular needs. Mm-hmm. So the feed's quite important, and I don't want to go on a long spiel about that because we've talked about that ad nauseum in other videos. But if you'd like to hear a feed video, I think I might do one. Introduction to chicken feed, because there's a lot of misunderstanding. So I was just talking last week about how people use spices as cures. Spices are not cures, okay? You don't cure chickens with spices. Like, oh, I give pepper flakes to keep away worms. Well, no, I mean, there is no, people get offended by this. There's no data to support that whatsoever. No veterinary research whatsoever about treating worms with, pepper flakes? Mm-hmm. The best cure is prevention. Yeah. Clean, healthy animals. Okay.
Feeding them proper nutrition. So what we do here on our channel, the Dinosaur Omelette, is we encourage others to learn new skills. We teach all sorts of things to do with homesteading and poultry and that sort of life.
All kinds of critters and print-friendly material at the bottom of the description of this video for you guys at home, for the kids and family. Download this stuff. It's very easy to read and educational and easy to print and good for the kids. Mm-hmm. All right, moving on. Mm-hmm. I shall begin. It is at the almost 5-minute mark. Mm-hmm. I'll just let you know, as usual, service announcement. This is not veterinary or medical or health advice. Please see your veterinarian for that. This is for education and entertainment. So don't come suing me when your chickens croak. Go to a vet. People do that. They're like, oh, I heard on the internet somebody said to feed them pepper flakes. Now my chickens are all deceased.
Yeah, the internet says many things.
Yeah, so don't trust the internet, people. But the information I give, I try to vet. But this is not going to be an academic video like like a high school thing like I like to do, where I go into the nutrition, physiology, cell biology, and all that fun stuff. This is about transition, things to be aware of from winter to springtime. I'm going to discuss this in 3 phases.
So it's winter to springtime. It's not going into winter?
No, we're in winter. I'm going to get winter stuff, things we're thinking about in winter, carrying over into spring, and how the animals are going to adapt to the environment that changes. Yeah. Okay.
That's good.
Winter's ending, temperature's changing, and the chickens are going to be acclimating to the new climate.
So as though we're going into spring.
Yeah.
Okay.
All right. Winter realities that still matter in early spring, and this is what I was really talking about in the beginning here, is the cold stressors carry over. What are the cold stresses? So during the winter, what's happening with the birds? If you haven't noticed, maybe you have, they're eating more. Have you seen this?
Well, I mean, as long as they're given more food, they'll eat more of it, for sure.
They're going to need
need more food
because
they're using more energy to stay warm.
Yeah, so the chickens are, they're at a high cost metabolic time of the year. They're eating a lot more food, or, a percentage more calories for heat. They got to produce heat so they don't freeze. And the birds are adapted to that, and they can do that, but they're going to be looking for food. Most of you guys, or some of you guys, I don't know, you're going to be doing artificial lighting. People are artificially lighting the coop for the continuation of egg production because the birds are sensitive to the photo period. If that is the case, they're definitely going to be even costing more food-wise for that energy because egg production is expensive. Generally, without the light, of course, the birds are going to cease laying because it conserves their energy, and their body naturally is going to be
going to need an slight increase in their food. But yes, if you want them to continue laying eggs, they're going to need more food for that as well.
Yeah, so they're eating probably a higher calorie or calorically dense diet if you switch the diets at all. The birds are trying to burn the fuel. So what may be missing is some amino acids. They might not be getting efficiently. Hopefully they are, but you may be noticing the food energy going into the maintenance of the body heat and body structure, and they may be losing some weight. Their feathers may be getting a little scruffy, losing some of the gloss. Are you seeing that at all?
I think, it depends on their food that you're giving them, but maybe a little bit. It depends also on the age. I have a lot of different
I'm going to go into the age of the chicken. But anyway, these are the things in the winter we're talking about. A couple other things, the reduced daylight and the reduced foraging time. Chickens like to do chicken stuff. They like to scratch and peck, right? But then when it gets dark at 3:30 in the afternoon,
it's very sad.
So their musculature is no longer being exercised at the rate that it would during summer. And you'd think maybe that's going to save energy, but that cold compensates for it. And they're still burning more calories, even though they're going to be a little more lethargic, at least suppressed movement. Does that sound about accurate with our chicken info? So so they're going to be moving less. Their feathers may be showing signs of wear, or again, amino acid profile may not be complete. You should be using a quality feed. You should be getting a complete amino acid profile.
You might see a longer delay. There are a lot of birds who will actually molt in the colder season. It depends on their age specifically. But I think it ends up being that birds end up molting in the winter because of when people start with chicks. So they always get them in the spring, and then
start laying by September, and then they stop laying immediately.
So then I think it's 18 months is when they do their big molt. But anyway.
So did you hear that, ladies and gentlemen? 18 months is the big molt.
Yeah, they'll do light molts along the way, but
molting is when they lose their feathers, if you don't know.
They grow new ones, and the purpose being their existing feathers have gotten tattered and worn, and they're shabby. They're not as nice, so it's time to grow new ones. And yes, anyway, so being winter, they may take a little longer to complete that process. Or like
Yep.
Christopher had mentioned, their feathers might look a little dull with the whole energy transfer. So just, it's so important to be mindful for any creature, including yourself, with food and meeting needs of the creature, the poultry, whatever it is, as far as getting the proper nutrition daily and the amounts and their needs met.
So if you're a new chicken keeper, or maybe you know somebody who doesn't know how to keep them properly and they're not doing the best of job, it's going to stress their little critter bodies. So something we discussed in the last video, I think, and I know the video before that, was the coop ventilation, the airflow in the coop. How's that coop designed, and is it a healthy environment for the birds? Because that's going to have a huge impact on the health of the animal, particularly if it's not facilitating airflow. If the coop's not designed properly to get the airflow so the birds are not overheating, or more likely they're not going to overheat because it's winter, but they will get moisture condensation, and that's pretty bad because that's going to instigate ammonia release from the bedding and potentially pathogen growth. Even though it's cold, the what do you call it? Compost? I guess the bedding.
Like the deep litter system.
Yeah, it's still warm. There's bacteria down there, which that bacteria is going to create and generate its own heat, allowing bacteria to thrive even in the cold. Mm-hmm. So when that moisture comes into contact with bad ventilation, it just makes a bad coop environment. So
sometimes, there's sporadic days of sudden warmness. Within that winter
and it
season.
Thaws.
Mm-hmm.
You can have thawing. So coming from winter time, if the animals are in a poorly ventilated coop, well, their bodies are stressed. Okay, they're going to be under stress or duress. And you may not notice it because it may not be significant, but it may be low-level chronic stress. So what's this doing? Just like with people, when they have a stress system and they're under chronic stress or duress, or something's not optimally healthy for them, well, then other mechanisms start to break down. So their immune system may be compromised. Why is this important? Well, what's happening? We're going into spring, and with the chickens, if they're not at good health, when they're coming into spring, they're more susceptible to all of the organisms that are now going to come to life in the warm spring weather. Mm. The coccidia, right? The little protozoas, the bacteria.
All the parasites.
And all the parasites that are looking for a chicken to live in. So if your chicken's coming out like this because they've been breathing in ammonia and they haven't been moving and they haven't been eating enough and they're kind of weak and they need to rebuild themselves, and they're old chicken, especially the chickens that are old that you like, your pets,
or even very young chickens.
Yeah,
the juveniles, if you got juveniles during cold season.
Yeah, so during that spring, that early spring, they may be depleted in one or more areas, which will make them more susceptible to the new competing organisms. Just like anybody else, they want to thrive and live.
Pathogenic load, is that correct?
Yeah, you have a lot of organisms. So if you have like one bacteria going into you, the other cells are like, they'll mow it down. But if you have 50,000 bacteria coming into you, they might hold up and start multiplying and taking a precedence. You know, one of the things about the gut microbiome, so when an animal's ingesting bad organisms, if you have a healthy animal with a healthy gut microbiome, like the what do you call them? Bacteria and flora and fauna living in the intestine and the gut, they outcompete for the bad guys. So they're using all the resources that otherwise the bad guys need to eat and thrive on. So with that really healthy gut, there's too many good guys in there using up all the stuff. That's a very simple way to put it, but generally that's it. And then they're going to have a stronger immune response as well to go find those bad things and keep them from infecting. Yeah. Please continue.
The poultry, they, for the most part, especially the chickens, they're always pecking the ground year round. So they're exposed to whatever lives in the ground, in the soil beneath their feet. So they generally do have some sort of, amount of parasites within them all the time, but their system is strong and vibrant when they're being, cared for and fed well. And they're hardy and can handle it with no problem. But with what Christopher's talking about, when the warm weather starts to come, those organisms multiply like crazy. Yeah. And the chickens are now taking on a higher load. If they're not healthy, if they're not being cared for properly, And, with this in mind, then those organisms can overcome them, and they're good guy. Yeah, they're good guy. Bacteria in the gut just get overloaded.
Yeah, they can't compete, and the animal's going to have a suppressed immune system where it's not functioning optimally if they're stressed, if they're living in a subpar environment during wintertime. So, wintertime treatment is very important for healthy springtime treatment.
Yeah.
So springtime, so we're coming out of winter. Anything else I wanted to mention? Oh, checking pre-springtime stuff. Checking the comb, vents, any signs of infections or things like this.
Yeah, it's important all year round, but to periodically handle your birds, feel them, and check to see that they have weight on them. They're not losing weight. They're not getting skinny.
They're so their feathers in the winter, you guys, are nice and fluffy, but if you pick them up and feel them, you can't see that they're bone thin if they have something wrong with them. Like you touch a sick chicken where it just feels like a rib cage.
Yeah.
Where they're really
and in the wintertime, they're going to fluff out their feathers more to create that heat barrier against their skin underneath the feathers. So it could be deceiving if you're not touching them, if you're not handling them. So it's important to do that. Make sure the skin and their comb and everything looks proper color. Yeah.
Super fabulous.
I would say also you want to. So heat is lost through their feet and through their face. So when they're roosting at night, they'll sit on their feet and cover their feathers, cover their feet, keep them warm, and then they'll stick their face in their feathers to keep it warm. But you want to keep in mind with freezing temperatures during the day when your birds are running around outside, the ground, if it's really cold, the ground can actually hurt their feet. And there's potential for like frostbites or just damage to the bottom of their feet.
So what do we do?
A good thing to do, depending on your setup, that would be
chicken
so
socks.
Cute.
I think chicken socks would be a great idea.
I just imagine them staring at their
probably
feet,
put those
like,
on
what's
Amazon.
on my feet. Really simple thing to do, depending on whatever your setup is put down some sort of bedding material in their favorite areas that they spend time, because they'll go where they want to go. They'll sit where they want to sit, and they won't necessarily stand in the bedding. So you put it where they spend the most time when they're outside. It could be some straw. It could be just make sure it doesn't get saturated. Make sure it stays dry. It could be the horse bedding pellets. Those work really well. They drain fluids really well. They fluff up and dry.
I saw somebody asking online about things to use. Like, what do they call them? Pine needles. No, don't use pine needles. Well, I know pine needles. I just want to throw this out there because I saw on the internet. So the pine needles, they trap moisture. Mm-hmm. So they're like a bedding for moisture. They're not going to drain very well, especially the chickens going on them constantly.
Yeah, and so same thing with the straw.
There are other natural.
You don't want to use like straw if it's like an area where it's like a damp area. You want it to be put in a place where it's
just
dry.
mat.
Yeah,
it'll become a super breeding ground.
Yeah.
Wet straw in the springtime, sitting matted in a pile.
But you could also use untreated mulch. That drains really well. So just something that they can stand on that's not the cold, frozen dirt, just to make sure to prevent their feet from being damaged.
Yeah, the bad guy bacteria, they like wet, warm substrate, squished down bedding, non-aerated, flattened straw. Mm-hmm. So you don't want to have that in there.
And I'm specifically just really talking about during the frozen season. So again, when we're going into the spring,
season's dry.
It's dry, but it's the frozen dirt can damage their feet.
Well, I know, yeah.
But,
so the straw would be okay.
So if what I'm saying with the straw is if it's an area that when the temperature does go up, there's once in a while days where once in a while we have those, like, it's suddenly really warm one day and then it freezes.
I love those days.
You don't want it to become like a swamp pit. So some people have like a lower area, just got to keep that in mind. Anyway, and then, when the ground is not frozen anymore, you can move that bedding to a different place or remove it altogether. Depends.
All right, moving on. So that's some winter stuff, and moving into spring. What do we got to worry about in the spring? I wouldn't say worry about, but plan for. So a lot of this stuff is like logistical stuff. Soil organisms. So we just discussed a lot about that. So spring's coming, and this is when the boom of growth everywhere happens. The plants are coming to life, obviously. Rodents, predators, everything's coming back to life. And the soil organisms that were lying dormant all winter, kind of like chilling out, well, they're coming back to life.
Yeah.
And they're going to multiply and thrive. So unsanitary conditions, if it's not clean, you're not keeping a clean yard, or they're all too many birds in one spot concentrating, it's going to create a bacterial boom, protozoas, parasites, all these things. So we want to make sure we have a clean area. I'm not saying dump bleach on the yard, but keep your area maintain sanitation
as far as
protocol.
manure and damp, moisture. Just make sure that it's not being overloaded with manure. So it depends on what your area looks like. It may need tending, or it may not need tending if it's very large. And yeah, just make sure it's not wet. So with those
dry winter chickens, a lot of them are hanging out in draft areas to get away from the draft. I mean, maybe underneath of a coop or other spots. The point is, they're probably not moving or milling as much. Or maybe they're concentrating in certain areas, but they're still doing chicken stuff. They're still scratching. So what's happening over the winter is they're changing the topography, like the shape of their ground. So you may find trenching or little dig spots where the chickens have been hanging out. Maybe they're even laying eggs under there. But the point is, you all of a sudden have these water reservoir areas, like catches for water. So running down if the drainage isn't proper. And you have these little chicken dig outs where they were hanging out all winter that change the land. This is going to be a capture for water, and it can be an area where their manure gathers up and where you might have standing stagnant water. So you want to definitely take a look at the topography of their little coop run and see if that's changed significantly enough to hold water in the springtime. Because, everything's shifting in spring, and that water does come back everything turns, like the first, I guess, March and early April is nothing but slush.
Yeah.
Everything's a mud pit.
Yeah, that's true.
And so,
Especially if you had snow.
Oh, I'm going to tell you guys something cool, too. Why it's so cold in January and February. So, late December, what is it, the 21st? That's when we go through the darkest time of year, and the sun starts getting higher in the sky again. But for some reason, it gets colder. Why is this? This is interesting. So what's happening is the radiant heat that's been stored up in the soil and the earth over the huge swath of land over the nation, over these big areas. Well, that summertime and fall heat is just about used up. It's all taken out of the ground, and that radiant heat is all gone. So it's not acting as a buffer anymore to the air. So all that cold air coming in, coupled with the fact that it's snow season, and there's something called albedo. So the solar radiation coming down to the earth goes and doesn't really heat the ground up in those northern latitudes where there's significant snowfall. And that affects the temperature too, because of the jet stream and everything and the way the air patterns move. So yeah, in this time of year, even though the sun starts creeping up higher and higher, it's just not enough solar radiation to reinvigorate the earth with warmth to combat the cold air temperatures. So it takes a little while. But that's why it's colder in those later months, which seems kind of counterintuitive if you're thinking, well, the sun's coming back. Why isn't it getting warmer? February seems to be like the worst. And I'm like, always every February, come on, man, it's almost spring. So that's what's happening. And that's why we're prepping for this. Anyway, in our area, February is the cold month. So soil animals are coming back. You have pathogens potentially you got to prep for. Make sure your animals are healthy before then with proper winter treatment. Most importantly is the feed and that coop design. Is it drafty? Is it too sealed? Okay, if you had you may be sealing your coop up a little bit for the winter, which is fine as long as there's ventilation and there's some airflow coming in there. If you had a very open structure where there's too much wind coming in and you want to keep the birds warm, then that's understandable. But you don't want to have it in the springtime where it's really sealed, because they're going to be hotter. You're going to be respirating more. There's going to be more air and moisture being trapped. So take a look and see if you need to remove any, draft blocks if you sealed it up a little bit. Springtime things to consider as well. Two big ones you guys probably aware of. We're going to talk about rats.
yeah, things start reproducing, or they're just excited about food opportunity and things like rodents. Uh, yeah, so if you have pets or domesticated animals, it's very, wise to make sure there's not excessive feed around or just sitting out overnight.
Yeah.
That's going to attract the rodents, and it's not fun to
Rats, unless you
have
like,
to deal with that.
unless you like shooting at the rats with the BB gun. Anyway, yeah. So the rats are coming back. It's baby season, so mamas are having babies. Their feed patterns and their territories change. So where if you did not have a problem, and the same thing happens in the fall. So these food and eating seasons and the offspring age is going to change their movement and their pattern, where these animals are staying. So you may not have raccoon problems in the fall, but there may be a raccoon problem in the spring just because they're moving around. They have little baby raccoons, which are cute, which I'm all, you like the baby raccoons?
They're cute, but they like to terrorize poultry.
Yeah, they're rodent. Everybody's breeding and they're looking for food. They got to feed the babies. So you may have a rodent problem or a predator problem that causes two issues. One, they like to eat your animals. We don't like that. That's not good.
No.
And two, they can stress them out. As we always talk about lurking predators, tapping on those windows like the big bad wolf. Stress those birds out when they're under chronic stress like that. They're going to stop laying.
So it's important also to, periodically check your structures, your coops, your fencing, to make sure your animals are safe, especially at night when they're locked up. But yeah, because things weather and, start to degrade integrity, wood, if it's not properly treated or kept up, can start to rot. So you want to make sure there's no weak points for these predators.
That's a good point. Check out the roofs and the exposed areas of the building where moisture gets in, because the moisture is a killer to chickens. Because if you have a moisture wicking section of a house that's just holding moisture and putting it in there, it's going to contribute to ammonia production in the coop, bacteria growth, mold growth. You have mold in there that's not good for them either. So yeah, definitely do a once over or even a twice over on your chicken coop in the spring. Make sure there's no moisture wicking in. Speaking of moisture, early spring thing to think about is it's freezing cold at night and it may warm up during the day. So you have a big temperature variance. So this again can present a moisture problem with bedding. The bedding may go through a thawing and freezing cycle, and when this happens, the moisture returns and it allows the breakdown of their manure. That white crystalline on top of all that chicken poop, that's uric acid, that's ammonia when it breaks down and comes in contact with water, and that's why you smell a bad chicken coop. That's ammonia. That's the water reacting with it. Say chickens don't pee. There's no urine, fluid, liquid coming out of a chicken. It's just a solid crystal. Way to go, chickens. And I did a video on that. It's really neat. It has to do with their flight and how they function.
To conserve water.
Yeah. So when the water does get in there, it degrades, it breaks it down, and you'll have ammonia.
And another thing for people who are new to chickens or poultry, or even people who are not new but haven't had experience with predators, I've seen time and time again, people will have their chickens. They don't lock them up at night. They don't close the doors. And they say, I've never had any issues with predators, and just take it for granted. But like Christopher mentioned, springtime and fall time, behaviors change, patterns change, territories are reestablished or made new. And perhaps your property is now on the target of the new raccoon family that moved in. So if you've never experienced predators and you don't lock them up, that's when you see the stories of, oh no, it's been 10 years and they're all, eliminated. And it's very sad. But people who are new to poultry, make sure that you are locking them up. The predators, they start lurking as soon as the sun starts going down. Depends where you are and the predators you have around you. But as soon as the sun starts to go down, they're starting to look and hunt, year round. So let's keep that in mind.
Very good. Yes. Sorry.
No, that's it.
I was going to say, I feel like watching The Fantastic Mr. Fox. If you guys have not
That's a good
seen The
one.
Fantastic Mr. Fox, a great movie about predators.
That's a good one, yeah.
It's a kids' movie.
It's fun.
All right. What else am I missing? I think that was pretty much the big things for winter. I mean, this is not complex stuff. I just want to go over it because it's a topic that should be discussed now and not in spring. If you watch these YouTube chicken people, they're going to wait till spring to do a spring video, which isn't the time to do a spring video. The time to do a spring video is like 2 or 3 months before spring, or at least a little bit of heads up, so you can consider what's going on and prep for it accordingly. And then also the changes, like your chicken infrastructure. Are you going to be using different water systems? Are you going to be using different lighting systems? The things need to be fixed. This is when you plan on it, not in, springtime when you're getting ready for whatever, trips, vacations, etc. All right, other things to think about. I think I went over this. This is part of the wrapping up here. Oh, dust bathing. Right, that's important. I forgot to mention that because that has to do with the parasites and things that like to chew on them. Dust bath. Chickens love dust baths. So you want to make sure your chickens have access to an area to do that into the dirt, right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, year round.
It gets off irritants, gets rid of
external
any external
parasites.
buggies that might be driving them crazy. Cools them down in the summer too, right?
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, you want to make sure they have access to an area where they can do their dust bathing, but not one that's going to become a mud pit.
I don't think that they'll use it, but it,
well, if they're digging a trench.
Mm-hmm.
So when they dust bath, they may be digging and digging and digging.
Yeah.
I mean, if you leave a chicken probably for 1,000 years and get to the other side of the earth, because they just. So you may want to check their dust bathing area. Just make sure it's not holding moisture, because the same thing will happen. Everything will start, when it rains, pull down into the low point. And when that rain is running off, it's carrying everything with it. Mm-hmm. So you're going to have a concentration of negative inputs. You're going to have concentration of the bacteria in these low points. Mm-hmm. Having a decent slope where it's just running off every time it rains, great. It's being swished off. Mm-hmm. And it can dry and it has drainage. But, take a look at the drainage in the area, because that's a big issue. That's, people with the coccidiosis problems or I'm saying if somebody's having a chicken illness problem frequently, I would look at the run and then the coop.
Yeah, the biggest things it comes down to is manure buildup, dampness in the material that they're living on or in, overcrowding of the birds because that's going to cause manure buildup, and nutritional needs not being met. And if there's stressors, if there's bullies, picking on certain ones.
Now, do the chickens do a repecking order in spring? Like asserting who's king again?
I think they maintain it. Now, if you do not put supplemental lighting, then they may be less active with a pecking order because the light is going to affect their hormones. If you do have the lighting, they're probably going to continue as normal because they're going to keep laying their eggs and their hormones are going to be working.
But if you don't have the lighting,
if you don't have the lighting, then they're probably going to be less active with their.
That makes sense because breeding's breeding. You want dominant mate.
Your roosters will probably stop or decrease, depends on the vibrancy of your rooster, decrease his activity with his ladies.
So if you're not supplementing the daylight to ensure continual egg laying because the chicken requires that, and if you do not supply the lighting, the chicken will cease laying its eggs to conserve its energy.
Now,
it's triggered by the light. But hold on, because I just want to say what you were saying. So if we do not provide light, the chickens are in a more natural breeding state. And so when spring rolls around, there's more daylight. They get back to laying eggs. It's breeding. So they're looking for mates again. And they may reestablish a pecking order based on that for, hey, I'm the top breeding individual and I'm in control.
Well, the hens in any animal group, any type of animal that lives within a group, there is a pecking order. And the reason for it is to create balance and normalcy. Without a pecking order, it can be chaotic, and they're not going to function well together. So that pecking order is actually really important, whether it's a wolf pack, a herd of sheep, a herd of horses, whatever it is, whatever group of animal it is.
They have a leader.
It creates balance for everyone.
Okay.
But what's I going to say? Oh, yeah. So if you do supply supplemental lighting and you find that their egg count has still decreased, remember, they will need more food. Their food does need to be increased because, again, they're using more energy to stay warm. So the producing eggs is an costly energy thing. So the increase in food will help them stay warm, but also help them continue laying if that's what you want.
One brief piece of information about the lighting, too. It may not be the food issue. I did a video on here, I guess, a couple months ago, maybe. I don't remember. But the lighting. So if you're using LED lights, which everybody uses, they have something called a flickering. The chicken's eyes see a higher flicker rate than the human. The human will see 60 flickers per second. If it's higher than 60, we won't perceive a flicker in a light.
So define a flicker for somebody.
Okay, so LED lights, they're not on constantly. They're very, very rapidly going on, off, 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 60 times per second. Okay, but we can't perceive them turning on and off.
So to us, it just looks like continuous light. The
chicken will see it as a strobe effect because they're perceiving a higher rate, like frame rate, like a movie, like pictures. If you're using LED lights, you want to hopefully have a high flicker rate. They're called flicker-free lights, and they do like 500 to 1,000 flickers per second. I forget. It's really high. But anyway, the chickens won't perceive it, so they're not going to be stressed out. When they perceive that flickering, to them it's like a strobe, and it may stress them out and cause the egg laying to cease. People may not realize that.
Or be affected.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So that's a little piece of information if you're setting up with supplemental lighting, or you have lighting in and you're wondering, why did chicken stop laying? I have lights. That might be the case. But there's a lot of things that can instigate stress in a bird. So it's not necessarily just that.
A predator crawling all over their house at night.
Yeah, it's like the old onion layer of causality or Occam's razor. The simplest explanation is usually the correct one. But if it's not, peel back to the next simplest explanation and so on and so forth. It's usually one of those top layers.
Yeah.
But it's possible to be something very bizarre. Space aliens be coming in and, abducting the chickens. It's a low probability. High stress, low probability. All right. Cool. Anything else that we should cover? Because this is kind of a short one.
Oh, we just flipped.
Oh, we flipped. Yeah, that's typical. Good, because we're ending anyway. StreamYard likes to flip my live streams, and that's why I do not pay for their service at 37 to 38 minutes every time I do this, and this is that time. So, guys, thanks very much for stopping in. Sure was lovely. Anything?
Yeah, let us know if you have any questions or comments. We'll see them, and we'll get back to you. But, yeah, if you guys like this type of information, feel free to subscribe. But, yeah, we tend to be here Thursday evenings, weekly.
Yeah. Cool. All right.
Thanks, guys.
Thank you for coming in.
For watching.
Yeah.
Bye.
Sorry for being sideways.